on fear and insight. We all experience fear. It is just part of the human experience in the duality of the physical mental world. Fear is a funny trickster and a sneaky little fellow. It is very hard to detect it, and it is often covered up with habits and activities that look completely normal. However, these defense mechanisms prevent us from seeing what stands between us and God. In order to experience the loving that is available to us all through our connectedness with the divine energy, which is made up of many different qualities such as wisdom, imagination, faith, power, will, understanding, and more, we need to stand like children, pure. Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 18:3. Becoming pure simply means that we release the layers of deceit covering our pure self, or the soul or spirit within us. When we felt fearful as children, we learned different ways of being, so to deal with the fear. Some of us were told not to be silly, there is nothing to be afraid of. So we learned that we have to deny our feelings of fear. Some of us were simply shown how the adults around us dealt with their sense of worry and insecurities that are different facets of fear. Some bury themselves in a heavy workload. Some often talk in loud voices. Some pretend to be careless and aloof. Some become an alcoholic. Some become mentally ill. Some become depressed. Some pursues endless activities and study projects. Some hides behind thick walls of their houses. Some pretend to be happy and cheerful all the time. Or else. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made of perfect in love. 1 John 4:18. Most of our fears stem from different so-called traumas in our lives. Some of these traumas are minor and hardly recognizable. Some are major that one could hardly survive. Regardless, they created a fear within us that we often treat with a habit or an action that keeps us separate from experiencing the fullness of God. Instead of healing the wounds and releasing the fear, we repeatedly treat them with habitual activities that actually do not serve our highest good. In order to find the best way to heal wounds, however, we must know what triggers fear in us. So we need to look into our patterns of behavior, defenses, habitual activities, and routines. In order to see them, requires us to become aware of our own self and every layer of it. The process of becoming self-aware and insightful is called self-study or self-learning. There are many ways to pursue self-study. One can attend seminars and workshops of different kinds. Some other methods are studying personality typologies. My favorite one is the system of the Enneagram, which can help us detect our areas where we experience fear the most and give us some indicators how we treat our fears. In my own personal experience, facing my fear was a process of many stages. The first stage was opening. I needed to open to the probability that I have fears that I hid from myself. I literally feared the fear. I perceived myself as a courageous and bold person, so for me, seeing my fears was a process of discovery. During the first stage of my discovery, I understood that I handle my own fears as a warrior. I wanted to tackle it. When I noticed that I had a fear of heights, I went bungee jumping or such. But fear is a clever chap. The more I fought it, the stronger it became. Stage 2. Sitting down with myself. During stage 2, I needed to start looking at where my fear stemmed from. I needed to look into the pain and traumas of my childhood and understand why I became a fear fighter and pretended not to have any fears. During this time, I came across the system of the Enneagram that helped me considerably to understand the underlying issues. Being an Enneagram 8 means that in my limited understanding, the more fear I feel, the more I fight, which prevents me from seeing what lies underneath the fear. I pretended to be strong and capable instead. The more I investigated the principal causes, the more I understood my actions and reactions. Insight into my own self started to give me choices that I did not have before. Honestly, it was a rather difficult stage because I had to take an honest look at myself, come to terms with the truth that, for example, I am not as strong and detached as I appear to be, and see the truth of who I am regardless of who I would like to appear to be. Stage 3. Embracing. I noticed that one of the reasons why we avoid, at any cost, looking into our flaws and pretenses is judgment. As soon as we notice that we do not meet the expectations of our self-image, we start judging ourselves. That creates separation and pain inside of ourselves. So during stage 3, I learned to embrace myself. Every time I realized something about myself that contradicted my self-image, I just closed my eyes and told myself that it was okay. I loved myself with all my flaws and incapabilities. As a result, I became more and more honest with myself and with the world. I simply learned to love myself no matter what. It's never perfect. I keep on discovering areas where I still judge myself or I play small. So I keep on embracing these flaws and forgiving my actions. Stage 4. Dissipating false self and discovering true self. As a result of discovering and embracing my false self, my cover-up activities and habits started to lose momentum and power. They started to dissipate, creating a vacuum in their place. And from physics we know that there cannot be space without energy filling it up. So I started to discover who I originally was before creating a false self. During my meditations, as I was expressing my loving for my flaws and releasing judgments and the limiting thoughts and behaviors along with them, I started to experience an inflow of energy. It felt as if God, in its grace, started to pour into me the knowing of who I am, in my essence, that is of God. This inflow of loving is literally enlightening. The more I release who I'm not, I receive the knowing of who I am. I am at this stage. I live daily the natural flow of divine cycle, as I call it. Insight, release, embrace, and the inflow of loving in return. Stage 5. Acting in accordance with the knowing of who I am. Fear does not really exist at this stage. This is the stage where one moves into complete alignment with one's God essence and the divine. We live in the flow of the moment. There is no past or future to worry about.